I was talking to architect Neil Leach, Professor Neil Leach, who who says there would also be the advent of AI, which would put most of the architects out of jobs, and it would just be taken over by AI. So maybe that will start.
So let's start then. Again, thank you and welcome, Rishab. Is that how you should I call you?
Yes, Rishabh.
Rishab. Just please introduce yourself to everyone.
So hey, my name is RISHABH WADHWA. I am an architect from India, but I work as a content creator. So I create content around architecture and design. Started with YouTube, now on Instagram as well. So yeah, all of my content is just um, delving deep or diving deep into the world of architecture.
That's good. Thank you, Rishab. And so share with us, for example, we will start from a different topics. But we can start, for example, when do you start studying architecture, and for example, where and how was your architecture course, for example? How was your experience as a student, and yeah, how did you find it?
So I studied architecture. I graduated in 2018. So I started from 2013. It was Manipal University, Jaipur. Um, so I studied there 5 years. The course itself was actually quite fun. I used to love just I used to go deep while I was designing. I used to like try and zone everything out and just focus on my design. And of course, I used to love doing that. And one good thing about architecture courses is you get to explore so much, especially at the younger years. It's not just one single thing that you're doing or you're just reading from books. Architecture is mainly not about reading from books, but actually creating stuff. So especially at the younger years, all the model making classes that we did, everything that we studied, I used to love studying history of architecture. I think that was primarily because of our professor as well. He just taught it in a way that we really love to study about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is also sort of what inspires me to this day to create the kind of content I do, is just to tell it in a way that is inspiring to more people. But yeah, I used to love exploring architecture and just learning about how it was made around the world. At the same time, sort of exploring models, exploring designs, and just trying out newer things. The 5 year experience, I think, was it was exhausting for sure, but it was a great experience.
Oh, that's good. I think I am each of us experience a different way architecture, and that's why it's interesting to hear for different perspective and different students what was architecture for them when they started. And touching this
True.
point, then, for example, when did you realize you wanted to become an architect?
So I had decided in my 10th grade that I wanted to be an architect, but I think that was also because in India in 11th and 12th grade you choose a stream that you go into, either science, commerce, or arts. These are the three popular ones.
Mm-hmm.
So you choose subjects based off of that, and you had to, if I at that point you need an idea of what you want to do in the future, because the entrance exams you cannot give if you've not taken particular subjects. So at that time, I think a lot of people try and decide what they want to do in the future, and I think architecture was what I had landed on. Like, this is what I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that is when I decided.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And so, for example, since you finished the university, what was the plans then? Well, like back then, because I believe now the plans are a bit different, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So when was that when
so
you finished? When you graduated?
so when I graduated, so our last semester was internship. The mandatory internship was the last semester.
Mm-hmm.
So I had spent 6 months at an office working. I loved them, they loved me at the office. So up until that point, it was clear I wanted to pursue architecture and do great things and create amazing structures, everything. um, it was during this internship that at the office I also started exploring a little bit of um, more of videos of what I do today, of just creating glimpses of creating the kind of content that I do today. Because of course today it's leaps and bounds from that stage. So I was already creating content, at that point for my channel, which was much much smaller than it is today. And I also did a little bit of content creation for the office. And it was when I was sort of it was the farewell, it was the last day at the office. And the principal architect there, she told me, like, Rishabh, you have a lot of energy, but you sort of use it in a lot of different areas. If you really focus your energy in one direction, you can really go a long way. And I think she meant, like, put it all in architecture. And but
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what, she's right. And I was like, if I actually want to do something in content creation, like, this is what I have to do, is sort of focus all of that energy onto it. And I think I came back home that year from my internship, and then I talked to my father. I was like, listen, the same year I was also supposed to go to Venice Biennale as a participant. So any which
Mm-hmm.
way, when I went, that would have disrupted any work that I would have done, or in the office I would have had to take a lot of leave. So I was like, listen, give me a year. Like, if in a year I cannot make something out of content creation or making videos, then I would drop it and go back to architecture, knowing that, I tried everything I could.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
um, so yeah, that was the mindset that I was in. And then I took a year after that, and just tried everything I could. um,
And so, sorry, go on.
I mean, so this is an interesting story I talked about in one of my videos in the channel as well. By the way, almost till the end of that year, nothing was working out. YouTube was not picking up as much as I'd hoped, because you always hope, let's overnight there'll be like 100K subscribers. This is not. It has taken me 4 years. Now I'm getting to 100K. So the process is slow of getting an audience. Um, of course, it's much better today with the onset of reels and all of this short form content that you can create on multiple platforms, because they are much higher with their reach. But otherwise, gaining an audience, it takes a little bit of time. And otherwise, also, I was trying to create videos for other companies as well. It was not just me. I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to create videos for maybe architectural firms. I randomly, there was a boutique nearby that hired me to create a video for them. So I was creating videos for people in that sense. But of course, the pay was not substantial. It was not something that I could really just keep doing. And it was only towards the end of that year, 10 days or 15 days before the end of that year, that I finally got my job as a video editor in a company that has nothing to do with architecture or videos. It was a motorcycle
Okay.
company who wanted to create content. They liked what I did, and they were like, come here and do it for us. And it was a very, how I even got that job was a very, it was a very weird way of things aligning and coming into place. But yeah, it was, I think, 10-15 days before is when I finally got the job, before the year was supposed to end, and then I pursued it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And so, for example, in that year, when you said, right, I'm gonna not give up. I'm gonna just quit architecture for a year, and I'm gonna see what YouTube has to give me, or like this video content. So how was like the feeling of that year? Because, for example, it was you were creating something new for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I believe you didn't have any income coming from the videos on YouTube at that moment, because, as you said, like it wasn't easy to get like a big
Yeah.
audience. So how was your like your friends' feedback, your family feedbacks as well, in terms of you've been studying architecture and now you're gonna create videos for YouTube?
So my family, up until even today, now they're like okay with it, with because I've started earning well now, and I'm doing good for myself now, getting in touch with architects around the world. So they see all of that, they see
Hmm.
the effort that I put in, and now they're sort of coming slowly to terms with it, that I'm doing something that I like, and also making money in the process, which is one of the prime things that they're looking after. um, at that point, I think, because I had asked for a year,
Hmm.
They were like, listen, and of course I was living back home. It's not like I was living by myself. So I didn't per se have any expenses that I had to take care of myself. Um, so that whole year, because I'd asked for a year, they were like okay with, they were giving me time. They're like, listen, try out the whole year, and then they were ready. They were prepared that I would go back into architecture, go and work with some office or something.
Hmm.
And even when I accepted the job, they were telling me, listen, architecture is a much better option than doing this what you're trying to do, and how much money would there be, and what is the future and everything. So there were all of those conversations going on. My friends were very of course they might not have got it, but they were supportive like friends are,
Hmm.
right? So they were supportive at that point also. They could uh, yeah, I mean, I don't think at that time anybody thought this would turn out into what it has and what it has, grown into today. I always believed in it. I sort of knew that this would grow, and it was just something inside me that said it would. And it has been the same for a lot of things in my life, that I knew that this would happen regardless of what
Nah,
is happening.
that's good. Like when when you are persistent with everything
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
do, like you just keep going,
exactly.
and you at some point you'll get somewhere. No,
Yeah.
that's good and inspiring as well.
Yeah, so I think that is what the whole year was just doing. And I'll be honest, even after that year, the reason I am where I am today, I think, is because also over time I kept pushing myself, not just to go beyond in the type of content that I'm creating and everything, but also increasing the quality of the work that I was doing. And over time, as people also saw that, they could see
Hmm.
that I am growing as a creator. And I think over time it has become clearer to both my friends, my family, that I do put in a lot of effort, and I am getting better at what I'm doing. And I think even today I would say that, of course, there's, even if you're at the top of the game, there's scope to improve, right? So it's all about being consistent, being improving, and they see that. And of course, money being a factor, both my friends and my family know now. They're like, nice. It's going well.
And so before we touch about more in terms of the topic of the architecture, and as we are talking now a bit more of your project, the Bless Architecture
Yeah,
or Bless Arch. So how that like the name came from, and yeah, what was the inspiration to have that name?
that's actually a funny story. Like, I don't even know if it's funny, but I just randomly kept it. Of course, the arc part of it comes from architecture,
Hmm.
and that is where the blessed arc comes. The blessed part, um, you know, I think one, it was an homage to just feeling blessed. Like, I did not feel it as strongly back then I do today, but it is about, I think, subconsciously, or just somehow, it was an acknowledgement of the grace that you have in your life, which I feel very strongly today when I take the name Blessedarch. Is that is what it means. Yeah, is
Hmm.
that, even when you're trying to achieve something, it is not just you doing it. There's a lot of things that come into place to make that come true, and it is about acknowledging all the you might call it privileges that I've had over the years, or everything that I've had. But I call it in terms of having that grace around you, having being blessed with a lot of
Hmm.
things. Um, so yeah, I think that is what it means to me today. Back then, it was the same reasoning, but it wasn't as strong as it is today. And it was like arc, and then thought for like 2 minutes. I was like, blessed. I'm gonna keep it blessed dark, and I just kept it, and it stuck.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good, and I find it interesting. Like when people create logos or names to certain things, I like to what's the thought behind it? What was the idea? And like because some part as well is the vision they see for the project as well. Because if they give it a name initially, they might kept through the years or through the growth of their project.
Yeah.
And but that's good. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I've been sharing your work for a while now. I've seen the portfolio reviews that you've done, or those videos as well that you mentioned about the history, in terms of some projects that you run through with us, the history of certain projects of certain architects, and that's very good. And I can see why you liked history that much in university. You at the same time you put that in your videos, which is good.
Yeah.
You at the same time teach to your audience as well a bit of history. Um, but you do a lot, quite a lot. The reviews, the portfolio reviews,
Yeah.
and for example, in terms of the architecture itself, and you as an architect, um, let me just try to put this into words. For example, um, how inspirational is for you as an architect to see this work to put into your work as well, if it makes sense. So,
Yeah.
so because for example, if we see a lot of portfolios, we try to, okay, this is good. This is a good idea to create like this, and we try to recreate ourselves the
Hmm.
same. Maybe like, obviously not the same way, but similar, or take that as an inspiration.
Yeah.
So because we review a lot of portfolios and a lot of architecture work, how that relates to you for your architecture or architect path, like as a career, or in the terms of the future as well.
So at present, since I've graduated, I haven't been pursuing architecture or practicing architecture the conventional way.
Hmm.
I have been a creator through like just after my graduation. First, it was obviously I was working for other companies as well, creating content for them, and now it's just Blessedarch. Yeah, it's just Blessedarch. All the way in terms of creating content. So when I do these portfolio reviews, of course, that sort of takes away from the fact that I don't ever need to recreate portfolios or like recreate my own.
Hmm.
Um, Even if of course, each and every one of those portfolios is fantastic. Every portfolio that I select for my portfolio review series is will be one of the best portfolios you'll ever see in your life. People are really talented. But yeah, the good thing is I don't actually have to sort of incorporate it into my own work. I do get inspired by everything that comes up, and it expands my view, my horizon of what a portfolio can be, and the different ways of creating and composing um, portfolios and showcasing your own work. I think how that it does affect me. Sometimes I do take inspirations of how to showcase certain things within my videos.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is all of what architecture is. It is, I don't remember where I heard it or read it. It was like nobody ever has an original thought anymore.
Hmm.
It is all about how you see, how you process it, and what output you create from what you have seen and processed. It is all architecture as a profession is about getting inspired. This is one of the reasons people travel. This is one of the reasons people um, love following. Let's say my page where they see a lot of projects, they see a lot of architects, and just getting inspired by their journey or by their works. So sorry. So
It's okay.
I take inspiration in that sense, and do incorporate it within my content. But otherwise, as an architect, I think I don't really need to create portfolio. So there's no thing
Hmm.
there of just taking that and sort of incorporating it in that.
So, in your mind at the moment, or on your plans, really planning to come back to your architecture or to pursue architecture like as an architect, soon, or
Um,
do you?
Not at the moment, but
Hmm.
I have I nowadays I don't say no to anything. Like in the I
Hmm.
because you never know what the future holds, ever. Especially since the pandemic came on, you really don't know what is going to happen. You can't predict it always. So I'm not saying that I would never go back, or there could be variations. I mean, I've thought about product design, and not doing like full scale buildings. But again, all of that, even if that happens, is in the future. Right now the main focus just is Blessedarch.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And in terms of obviously not for the companies or for yourself, do you still do drawings like architecture drawings, or even if you fancy, oh, let's make a 3D or something? Do you still do that work?
um uh, I do, but nowadays I don't do it for myself. It's because I'm taking classes that I do it.
Oh, okay.
Like, because I teach other people how to do 3D. So, and that is sort of my extent to how much I use 3D at this moment. I have thought about, again, in terms of content only,
Mm-hmm.
um, taking part in competitions and documenting the whole process while doing it. So again, that would include creating that whole design. Of course, this time, when I was in college, I used to do it all by my own.
Mm-hmm.
Here, of course, content wise and also output wise, it is just better when you do it with more people. So there are different things that I'm planning with different people, which would get me back into just modeling, just sketching for myself, for creating something uh, uh, from it, architectural.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, it's limited to those classes and workshops.
That's fair enough. And that's interesting to mention about your classes and workshops, because I believe, again, maybe from your videos I haven't heard that you teach as well and you do workshops. So where, if anyone is interested, where people can find the information, and for example, what kind of workshops do you do?
So at the present, so I actually just started a few months back.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, if somebody wants to know the information for it, I should make a website and properly do it. But I would say just my social media channels. Whenever there's something new coming up, I announce it there. So I obviously, one, had taken workshops on portfolio building.
Mm-hmm.
So it was basically all the lessons that I learned from the portfolio review series, and reviewing all of those portfolios, not just the good ones which I showcase, but also the bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of, it was a whole guide of what to do, what not to do. So that was the portfolio masterclass that I did. And my second workshop, which I'm currently doing, is the Rhino and Grasshopper workshop. So I'm teaching people how to 3D model in Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
Take all of them to a level where they're just comfortable. If they see a geometry, how would they recreate it in Rhino? I want to take people to that level of ease and just creating it. And of course, then introducing them to Grasshopper, just opening doors to newer geometries, newer ways of designing, thinking. So there's that. At the moment, there is no particular other place where you would find it, but just my social media would channel, as soon as if a workshop opens up,
Mm-hmm.
it would have all the details. And that is
Oh,
why
that's
you
good.
would not find it anywhere on my videos or anything, because it's just started at the moment.
No, that's good. That's good. And it also it's interesting to know that you do that workshop as well as your aside work. And so you're at the moment in India, right?
Yeah.
And do you plan in terms of future to work abroad, um, or even for your channel as well? Like
So
for example, yeah. Sorry, go on.
um to so one of the things is, of course, I want to be, this year and the start of next year, it would just be prepping for it. But right now, all of my content is also just, it's just me right here in this
Hmm.
particular frame, talking about a lot of things around the world. I also now want to be traveling more. So I want to be traveling around the world and creating the content that I do, not necessarily just settling down in one single country that is away from India,
Hmm.
and pursuing it, but basically just moving about, documenting, learning about different things, and then sort of creating the kind of content around it. So that is one of the goals that I was into. um, yeah, other than that, I don't think at this point it is in my mind about just settling into another country, uh, and sort of pursuing, because also you can't easily,
Hmm.
in the sense that I'm not doing a job for somebody,
Exactly. Yeah.
and content creation is not specifically a business. Either I'll have to get it registered there as well. I don't even have it registered here in India at the moment. It's just it all works on like just me right now.
Hmm.
Um, so there'll be all of those hoops to jump through if I ever want to sort of live somewhere else. But I don't think I don't permanently would want to live somewhere else. Maybe travel a lot of places around the world.
Yeah.
But like I really enjoy living where I do.
No, that's good. The reason I've asked, and probably this will be easier if I was doing us after this question, because basically, I was going to basically ask you, what's next plans? Oh, I think you already told, but for example, for Black Stars and as well for architecture, because um, but I think, as you said, like you do everything right at the moment. You don't really plan ahead because everything could change. Correct. But
Yeah.
do you have any plans for Blast Arch that you wanna, or do you visualize for Blast Arch in the future that you want to achieve, or the plans you want to do?
So for Blessed Arc, it is obviously just continuing the trajectory that I'm on and
Hmm.
just getting more growth, more audience around the world. Um, with Blessed Arc, I think it is the goals are pretty straightforward. It's just connecting with maximum amount of architecture enthusiasts around the world and talking about different things. That would be connecting with different architects around the world, talking about newer projects, maybe critiquing the old ones, learning from architects of the past or buildings of the past. So there's all of that. Other than that, I'm still to mind about it, but of course, at some point of time, I will have to decide how and when would the Blessed Dark and it would grow as a team, because right now it's just me
Hmm.
who works on everything. And finally, this year I've gotten an editor who works on the Instagram videos. But I can still see myself get overwhelmed with the amount of work that I do. So it would mostly be, and then expanding into a team to just create more content around it. Uh, so but the goal in the future is to also do things beyond Blessed Dark.
Hmm.
Of course, traveling the world, creating content, and just creating these stories around architecture, but also going beyond that. Because there's a lot more, even in terms of content, there's a lot more that I want to explore. That might not have anything to do with architecture, uh,
Hmm.
but I do want to explore it just as creating content, and I know it does the kind of content that I want to create also does have an audience out there. It's just that I have to start. So
Okay.
yeah, so it would be first of all explore it's expanding more. Like of course, Blazak will keep growing, but also expanding into more genres of content, and then maybe we'll see coming back to architecture or something else if there is.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. And so in um, continue to touching the point in terms of your Bless Arch and your project. Um, because you already talked to a lot of people inside of the industry, architects specific as well. Um, how do you see architecture in the future, or how is become? Oh, let's make another type of question. How do you see architecture is becoming? Because as you see, architecture at the moment is not the architecture of a couple of years ago, and it's changing eventually. So when I'm mentioning about architecture itself, I'm also mentioning, for example, the type of the work the architect is doing, the software they're using
Yeah.
as a tool, etc. So how do you see all these things in architecture that it changed eventually, and how do you see in 20 years time, 30 years time, like how do you see in the future based with the conversations you have already had with people in the field?
So firstly, touching upon the softwares,
Mm-hmm.
I would just say I think forget 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the access to the kind of education that you have online now was not available as much back then. So I see in the future people, and even if I specifically talk about India,
Mm-hmm.
people, there were a lot of enthusiasts even when I was graduating, or maybe let's say started college, who were doing a lot within softwares, within parametric designs, within generating these, let's say, extravagant or these complex geometries, and just playing around with the software. I call it, mastering that software. Even if you don't use those geometries anywhere, it is about testing and exploring what all is can be done within that particular program. And that was being done, but at a much lower scale. Today it is huge,
Mm-hmm.
even especially from India. There are people who are uh, just wanting to learn more and more, explore more and more. So I see that just becoming more uh, dominant around the world, is just people sort of expanding their own skill set, which colleges around the world don't prepare you with. Like, they won't teach you a lot of things that there are about the field. But there are now resources available. I think that would also in the future force colleges to just change and get better, because otherwise they would just become outdated institutions that just hand out degrees that you can use to get a license and nothing beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then people might even question, why do you need it? Like, in India it's 5 years. Why do you need 5 years? Just take a year, make me do random things, and give me a degree so I can become an architect. um, so I can see all of that changing, but keeping a bigger picture in mind. Of course, I think, and the Blessedarch light just went away, but I think there would be an explosion of uh, more of architecture that is more for aesthetic purposes in the shorter run, is just, trying on different uh, kind of structures, or going for parametric stuff. uh, it would just be a more of a burst, because now everybody would be skilled, especially in creating that digitally, and then they would also slowly get skilled in creating that in the real world. But I think when we talk about 20-30 years, we see this year itself compared to last year. And even if you keep comparing year by year, you
Mm-hmm.
compare decade by decade, if you want to, um, you see the climate crisis worsening over time. Even this year, there are fires in like half the world at the moment.
That's very true.
In
Yeah.
India, the heat wave was really bad when we had our summers. Of course, now is the monsoon, which is pretty late than it usually is, even where I am. We're fearing the winter would be much colder than it usually is. So even though people would continue with their fancy and create, exciting buildings that are just gorgeous to look at,
Mm-hmm.
um, we would again be forced, because of the worsening climate crisis, to make buildings, even if you don't want to make buildings that are sustainable, to make buildings that um use materials in a smart way, that are better insulated from the world outside, and still can create a beautiful environment inside. And then within that, I think people would start experimenting again. Of course, people who want to create beautiful things will still create beautiful things. But
Absolutely.
now, with these new set of parameters that are not a choice anymore, but would become a necessity. So I think overall, um I have an optimistic view of architecture, where I see it as people would um learn to experiment and to adapt and create structures that can actually help enrich the life of people, and not just the life of people living in it, but uh, it would I am hoping it would be created in such a way that those structures can enrich the lives of people around those structures, well, maybe who will not use it. It's just creating it in such a way that it respects what is around the structure, and it
Mm-hmm.
respects the rights of everything around that structure, whether that is human, whether that is any other part of nature. And hopefully that would be where architecture leads to. Of course, I was talking to architect Neil Leach, Professor Neil Leach, who says there would also be the advent of AI, which would put most of the architects out of jobs, and it would just be taken over by AI. So maybe that will start to happen. Because again, with AI, you can have an artistic approach, but you don't need to. AI will give you like if the software is trained perfectly, it'll give you the optimal solution for the particular design problem that you have,
Mm-hmm.
um, without having any person's ambition or their particular vision in the way. It is all about the problem, and that is it. um, so we might just see that also where
No, no,
the
that's
profession of architecture gets obliterated.
no, that's very interesting. And then we start to think ourselves, for example, as you were mentioning about the climate change, and as well, like the population is growing, and the competition
Oh yeah.
is even more. So I believe it will be more architects than there is now. And if, as you're saying, that if the AI is changing in terms of the employment or the change the way we do, um, it's gonna be interesting how it's gonna be because we're gonna have more architects but less work because the computer is doing it all.
Yeah,
but um,
which would, by the way, make the conditions of the professions even worse. People are not paid well right now. Imagine if half the work is now being done by computers. It would also create a massive, if it does happen, if this is all hypothetical of course, but
mhm,
if it does happen, it would create a lot of unemployment, and also people just accepting much lower salaries just to stay employed,
mhm.
or exploring different avenues with the skill sets that they have. Because I
Absolutely.
think, like, one of the things that I think is, even though AI might take over architecture, let's say something as simple as, not even all of it, let's say AI is just developing the building envelope,
Mhm,
so that it can best access the resources, still give you let's say shading from the sun, where you want the light from, where you want the wind from, certain things, all of these are easily done by AI, much faster done. And then so it might slowly start eliminating maybe facade designers, and it would start slowly like that. But I think one place where architects would still be needed is interiors, because no matter what, how you create it on the outside, because it does interact with the world outside, the interiors will still be about aesthetics
mhm.
majoritarily. And I think that is where a designer's eye, it'll be very difficult to push out a designer from that space.
No, absolutely. And I think we were just talking about what we see at the moment, because at the moment we have all this metaverse going on as well, and AI as well. Um, and then maybe we think, okay, and in 5 years' time, we might be still using the AI and metaverse, but what's going to be in 5 years' time that will be created, and it will be a thing as well for architecture. I think architecture might be something that we need to solve the problems that are happening in the present, that are happening now, and all these tools, all these companies' creations, it will come along, and then I think everyone needs to adapt because I think is how the world gets on, like gets keep going because we can't just keep
For sure.
behind and
I
let
think I
them.
was just watching a reel by Gary Vee where he showed like a snippet from David Letterman
Hmm.
when he had Bill Gates on, and it was in the 90s. And he was sort of curious about what the internet is, what it can do, because nobody knew. It might just be 80s, not the 90s, I'm not sure. Of what the internet can do, and obviously he was making jokes along the way about the internet, about Bill Gates also, because the technology at that time was just bad,
Hmm.
right? And if you could see that, and that is what, and then Gary Vee continues that that is the problem with people, is that they focus on what it is today, but they don't see what the potential that it holds for tomorrow. And that is why a lot of people might just push it off, saying the metaverse is just gaming, or the AI is just, it can do a few things, but it can't really do much more than that. It is actually expanding at a much faster rate than, I don't know if anybody would have anticipated, the leaps and bounds that are increasing at.
Hmm.
um, and so I think it is all about understanding the possibilities that these uh, hold for the future, rather than just seeing what it can do today.
No, absolutely, and we can see as an example as well. For example, Zadid, she's well, the company is partnering with PUBG, the game,
Yeah,
to design the game itself. So that's another field for the architects and architecture itself, where
yeah,
they
because
could.
entertainment is not going anywhere, so they could just
No,
get into
exactly.
entertainment.
No, that's good. That's good. And your light came on again. Bless Arch.
Yeah.
So we're now 45 minutes, which is a good time, a good episode frame. And again, thank you very much for your time and to be with us and share your background, your thoughts, and your project behind that. No, that's very good, and thankful for that.
Anytime, man, and thank you so much for inviting me.
No, thank you.